Hi, my name is Mark O'Brien. I'm the writer-director of The Righteous.
Cool. Awesome. Great to be chatting with you today on the Filmcraziest show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
I saw the film last year at Fantasia, so I just love to start by asking, like, what's it like going from that journey all the way to now as it's finally being released?
At some points torturous because I was like, oh my God, I just want my movie to come out. But it's been wonderful because it's been a nice, it's just a slow burn. It's still sticking around and finally coming out, and it's had a nice run. And instead of just coming and going really quick, it's kind of picked up momentum in a lot of ways, which is really cool because you make a movie, you just want people to see it. You want them to experience it and see what they think of it. So it's actually been pretty great, and I've been excited for June as opposed to anxious for it.
That's fitting though, because the film is a slow burn. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
now I'd love to ask you reunite with Henry Czerny from Ready or Not. So what was that like reuniting with them, kind of casting him for the film as well?
Well, he's such a good friend of mine. We became good friends after Ready or Not. I love him to death. I think the world of him, and he's just a treat to be around and to watch him work. And he does it with such grace and ease and affability. He's always laughing. We're always joking. So that's kind of what you want. You want that treat of working with someone who is a joy to be around, and it enhances the work when you work with someone like that, because everyone feels good when the number one on the call sheet is a happy professional person who's really ready to dive into the material, which he was from the day he read the script. He was like, we talked incessantly about it for months, in a lot of fun ways, nothing specific, but just like in overall conceptual ways.
Also, what was it like casting Kuzyk for the film as well?
Well, I'd worked with her very briefly before, and I wrote it with her in mind. She's a very unique quality. She has this like strength, but but it's also like sort of a sadness she can bring across really, really simply. Well, she also seems like she's thinking about something else, in a great way. There's a mystery to her, and you don't get that. It's a weird combination, and it's hard to put into words. But when I was writing it, I couldn't picture anyone else. And Mimi is the same as Henry, like just so much fun to have on set, and it's a joy because that's part of it. Is like I want to enjoy what I'm doing, and with those guys, it was a joy every day, and it just a dream experience.
Okay, with her character as well, can you talk about like kind of believably be portraying the progression from her being hesitant of your character Aaron to kind of her maternal instincts coming in?
Well, I think it's a seduction. I think it's a non-sexual seduction. I think it's like, you're also filling a void, right? Like she's suffering a lot of loss in the beginning of the movie, and then someone comes in and is potentially replacing that loss. So that fulfillment is it leads to ecstasy in a way, and it makes you kind of blind to obvious red flags because it's just filling a void that needed to be filled so desperately that she becomes unaware. And I think that's how it happens. And I think my character has a lot of mystery to it too, of what he's capable of and what he's not capable of. So I think that plays a factor as well.
Okay, what was it like perfecting that accent as your character?
I've done it quite a lot. I've done a lot of accents. I tend to, God, I think in the few years I've done New Orleans, Oklahoma, Boston, Chicago. Oh my God. Yeah, I end up doing a lot of accents in my acting work. So that came pretty naturally. And I always wanted him to have a Southern accent because it kind of sets no time, no place, more mystery to this character even more. Like, where is he from? And the South, the general South of like geographical South of the States, that generic accent could be a lot of different places. So it covers a lot of ground. So it was kind of the most like hardest to pinpoint of accents. So I thought it added to that ambiguity a lot, and I was quite comfortable doing it.
Okay, cool. Now, just as your character, like there's a lot. Your dialogue in the film is very sharp. So I just love to ask in the writing process, what was it like, kind of perfecting that monologue where you're talking about skipping rocks or throwing rocks in the water?
You're the first person to ask me about that. That's based in reality. I used to do that when I was a kid. I used to get my older sister, to take me down the road. I grew up in a very small town. There was a little like a stream, and we'd throw rocks in the water. I just loved throwing rocks into the water. It's kind of bizarre and seems mundane, but I guess when you're bored and you're a kid, that's just something that creates some sort of excitement. There's splashing and there's rocks cracking off things. I was very young when I used to do that. And I don't know why I liked it. And then, you know, your personal life kind of just gets fused into the script sometimes. And my sister watched the movie and she got really emotional about it. Like, I remember doing that. And I'm not even, what that story means is something I'm not even really ready to reveal, because I'm not sure what it means, but it just felt right. But it has something to do with mysticism and willing things into be. And there's a lot of that in the movie. There's a lot of willing things to be, which one could also substitute with praying things to be in the movie. So I just felt like it was part of the overall theme in a way. That also is kind of a weird story. It's kind of confusing. It's not like, hey, one day, like, you know, I jumped out this window and all of a sudden I was fine. I landed on my feet and it was okay. It's like, oh, right on. This is like kind of weird. It's like, oh, what a strange story to tell someone. It's not super interesting, but he's so invested in it that I think it just adds to Frederic's confusion onto who I am and what I represent.
Your performance, especially in that scene, is just so magnetic as well that it's just kind of, to me, it almost seemed like that could have been the starting point for the script, like the starting point for the character.
Oh yeah, I suppose it could. It's really when you get to know him a little, because you never really understand Aaron, I don't think. So it's a way of getting to know how he's not going to let you in completely, and it mixes vulnerability with a threatening nature at the same time, which I always love a dichotomy of character. Like I like when they can go one way or the other any second. So it is kind of an establishing note for him.
Okay. Now, we were talking about a bit about the grief earlier, and I thought it was very interesting, just the character of Doris, with how she, just the first conversation we see her in, where she's trying to talk about the grief and they're trying to get around to around it, and she's trying to go back into it. Can you talk about like kind of showing that scene and thinking of that character?
It's a bit of a comedy of manners at a certain point there. But that was intentional. It's kind of a funny scene. I find that scene funny. I don't really think audiences kind of laugh here and there. Not that I want them to laugh, but I find it funny because they just want her to get the hell out, and she just wants to stay, which really establishes who she is, and it's a foreshadow to my character coming. So that scene with her was very delicate because she comes in and changes the tone of the movie completely, which was intentional. She's supposed to sort of change it. It's a different energy, it's a different vibe, and it throws them off. And really what the movie's constantly doing is throwing Frederic off this way, that way, until he can face who he is and what he's done so that he can be free. So that's kind of almost the first instance of that. But it always comes at him in weird ways, like it does in life. Things come at you in ways that you didn't predict or you couldn't have been prepared for. They just present themselves, and that's what it is.
And also kind of, to me, it's almost a scene of Canadian politeness.
You know what? There was someone else, someone reviewed it. Yes, I did an interview with someone who also did a review. It was what's Kurt's last name? Kurt at Screen Anarchy, and he talked about that, and he's Canadian as well, and he was like, "There's a lot of that in the movie." He mentions it in his review, and he's right. He's right. There is a lot. It's, you know what, I wasn't super conscious of that, but I was in one respect of, you know, remember Fincher's Dragon Tattoo?
Yes.
You know, before Stellan Skarsgård brings Daniel Craig downstairs or whatever, and it's like, you know, it's the end of the movie, he's gonna kill him. There's a part where Daniel Craig's been searching through Stellan Skarsgård's house because he's starting to suspect him, and then Skarsgård comes home, and Daniel Craig runs out with like the kitchen door or whatever, and leaves the door. Like, it's clearly that someone's been in there. And Skarsgård goes outside and sees, you know, Daniel Craig outside, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he was like, "Nothing." And he's like, "Well, come in for a drink." And then he's like, "Okay." And that leads to him being hung up and almost murdered. And Stellan Skarsgård's character says at one point, he's like, "You risked your life because you didn't want to be impolite." And I always love that because it's true. He could have just been like, "Anyway, I'm going to leave." And Skarsgård couldn't kill him there. He'd be like, "Oh, okay." But instead he's like, "Come in for a drink." He's like, "I got to go in. It's going to be weird if I kill him." And I love that. And that was in my mind in the movie at a certain point of like, why doesn't anyone just tell someone to fuck off? You know what I mean? But it's just not within you because you're playing it. You don't know what it means yet. So everyone's always playing one another in life. You're not always revealing your true self constantly.
I love that you bring that up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And now I know you're from Newfoundland. So I'd love to ask, I believe you guys filmed this in Newfoundland?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
So what's that like for you filming kind of in your home province?
Well, I did a show called Republic of Doyle for years in Newfoundland, and it was a treat. And then I moved to LA, and I've been working in the States almost exclusively since then, minus like 2 films, I think. And so to come home meant a lot to me. It actually meant the world to me because I'm a very proud Newfoundlander. An indescribable thing about being there, and even people um, who aren't from there, I think, kind of feel that there's an energy there, and I wanted to be part of that, and I wanted to go home again, and I wanted to make it with friends and be around family, and just enjoy it. And so it was the greatest treasure I could have had when it came to the movie. Like, I couldn't imagine making that movie anywhere else, even though it's not set any place. And there are other locales that could look similar, but I just couldn't imagine making it anywhere else.
Awesome. I'm also always a nerd for location scouting. So how did you find the house that you guys shot in?
And I can't believe it. That was the second house we looked at. I was like, I can't believe it was only our second house, because really the whole movie is the
Wow.
house, and we didn't want to have the interior be different than the exterior, because then you got to travel, and we wanted everything to be in one location for expense reasons. But more so, I actually find it easier when you can shoot outside as well, and you don't have to cheat something, blah 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 blah. Anyway, but it was the second house we looked at, and I was like, it looks great. It looks great. We had to do some work on the inside, like that was all set decoration on the inside. Like, that was us. It did not come looking like that. But the outside we
Okay.
didn't touch, and it was just great. It was perfect, and it was close to St. John's, so it wasn't like we had to travel too far. So everything about it just came together. It was one of those things. It was just meant to be.
Okay, awesome. And like just speaking about the house, one of my favorite shots in the film is um when Frederic first meets Aaron, when he's holding the knife and kind of like a silhouette on the porch. So with that in mind, did you have any favorite shots in the film that you were like excited to shot list or in
Well,
that respect?
I kind of have the whole movie in my head, and then you're willing to move things around as you get there on the day. But that shot, that was a completely, and I really mean I had every shot in my head, but that shot was completely Scott McClellan, the DP. It was his conception, and it was obviously his lighting. He had showed me a shot from True Grit, the Coen Brothers True Grit, and he was like, "That should be the shot." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" So I don't even know, I can't remember what I had planned before that, and he just nailed it. And that scene was so important because I was like, I don't really want you to see my face. I don't really completely want to cover, because that's too obvious that we're trying to cover my face, but I don't really want to see it. And it makes it more like, who is this guy? What's he doing out there? So I mean, that's such an important scene, and Scotty knocked it out of the park. I love the way that scene feels.
Yeah, me too.
It's cold, very cold.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was very, very cold. Yeah, it was awful.
Was the film always like from the writing stage, did you always want it to be in black and white?
Yeah, from day one. It was just the only way I could picture it. Like, I couldn't see it any other way, because it was just in my head, and it never left my head. It was like, that's the way it's got to be. And if I did that, then I'd betray my natural creative instincts for the movie. So I just kept with it, and you got to sell it to everybody, and everyone's like, why? And you're like, just because. I'm like, is that good enough that I just want to just do it? It was no other notion that it just made sense to the movie, and then I leaned into it as well to make it work thematically, and for other reasons as well, because you might as well use the aspects of black and white on a technical level and on a thematic level. If you're going to do it, you might as well lean into it, which we did. And it was exactly the way I wanted it to look and feel, which was really specific.
That one, I don't want to spoil anything, but that one scene where you kind of are asking Frederick to be a good man, a good man, and then you kind of glide towards him. How did you pull off the glide?
I'm on a dolly on my knees, and I had to hold onto a handle behind me as it pushes forward. It was really, really actually very tough to do physically, especially the whole scene. I'm doing it on my knees on something that's underneath the camera, so
Oh,
you can't
wow.
see it. So I'm holding on to something on my knees, and then moving forward, you can't budge at all. So, but that was designed. That was designed like in the writing stage. I wanted that. I really wanted that glide forward, which you see in some movies. Coppola used it a lot in his Bram Stoker's Dracula. Spike Lee uses it a lot in his films, but I'd never seen it used in that kind of a way. So it was something. It wasn't a completely original idea, but I made it my own in that kind of way.
Okay, very cool. And also, obviously, you write and direct the film. So I'd love to ask, what are some of the challenges with acting in a film that you're directing, and also like anything really exciting about it?
Well, what's exciting about it is that I'm getting to do all the things, and I want to do all the things. I want to play with all the toys, and I love that. I find it really fun because you're part of every aspect of the storytelling, and especially if you've written it, I know this thing inside and out, so I know what I want it to be. And for better or worse, I want it to be such and such. So if I can just get in there and perform it, that feels right. One of the challenges is you can't sit by the monitor, so you don't really know. So every single time we cut, we had a touchpad playback system, which I said we would need. I was like, we have to have that. So I would just go and just skim through it and be like, all right, looks good, great. Because Scotty, my DP, knew exactly what I wanted to do. I'd set up the shot and we had to stand in and I'd see how it was going to look. And I'm like, okay, great. So then I'd get in, and then after I'd maybe just do a few takes, and then I'd be like, now let's go see it. Okay, great, good, let's move on. Because I don't need to listen to it. I just need to see it because I was there. I know if it worked or not. So now I need to just see how it was photographed, how it was captured. So that was the only thing, but it didn't cost us any time really. It was like, take me 30 seconds, and then it'd be like, yes, no, great, let's go. I kind of like to make up my mind pretty quickly. So it was advantageous. I loved it. I loved it, man. I just loved it. Like fully making a movie in every aspect. We were editing at night, like every night and on weekends, and while I was making it, it was the most immersive experience I could have possibly had. And the only way I could be more immersive is if I actually slept at the house, which I was probably close to doing a couple times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not really, but it would be if I did.
Okay. And my last one, I always like for first films as like director, I just love to ask, like, what was the biggest thing you learned about yourself as a filmmaker?
That I think I had a clearer voice than I thought I did. And because you go into a movie, you don't really know exactly how your voice is how it's going to come across and in what way. And I as I was doing, I was like, oh, this is really clear. Oh, I actually know the story I'm telling, because you
Cool.
have to be sure about that. And I guess I'd done so much work for years trying to find the right thing that I wanted to say, and it became really clear. And there's a million things too I picked up along the way that I can get better at and stuff like that. But it's just so many little things. But overall, conceptually, it was a lot to do with like, yeah, I think as long as my next one, the story is just as clear, I'll be okay. It's gonna be fine. And I don't need to worry, I don't need to think about it. Just make the story clear and go from there.
Okay, awesome. Looking forward to the next one and seeing what you do next.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So love to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today about The Righteous, and hopefully a lot of people see it.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for your support, man. Nice meeting you.